Okay, I want to now officially welcome you to our Partner Together to Give Hope campaign. We are so glad that you are here. My name is Gabby Viesca, and I am just delighted to be your MC tonight. This is my fourth time emceeing this fundraiser, but it is my first time doing it in person with all of you, and that makes me so happy because I see so many familiar faces, and I would love to at some point connect with all of you who I know, starting with John and Becky over there. It's so good to see you guys. So good to see you guys. I just love the work that HHF does, so it is a privilege, a great privilege for me to MC, and I want to say thank you once again, Doug and team and everyone, for inviting me to be part of this event. The cost of tonight's event has been generously underwritten by the Hope for the Homeless Foundation board members and also your table hosts, so let's thank them. And we also want to thank two generous sponsors for this event tonight. Multifamily Northwest and the Harry A. Merlot Foundation. Thank you so much to both of you for your generosity. Thank you. So when you arrived this evening through those doors, you were confronted with the reality of the homeless situation as you maneuvered around the tent in our homeless campsite out there by the entrance. This campsite represents distressed, suffering people living in dire conditions throughout our city, oftentimes addicted to drugs, unable to make wise choices, some of them perhaps committing crimes and even violence towards those who cross their paths. Now, I want to draw your attention to the little houses around your table, in the center of your table. Can you see them? Those tiny, cute little houses there. These houses represent shelter, safety, community, and most importantly, hope. This is the journey that we want for all the people that are living on the streets today. It is a journey, and it does not happen overnight. The homeless population in our city need lasting solutions for their unique situations that brought them to this place of being homeless. And this is why Hope for the Homeless Foundation searches for organizations who address the underlying causes that cause homelessness and those that bring stability to, address the underlying causes bringing stability to those in our streets. Instability. That brings us to tonight's event. Why are we here? We think we know why we're here. It might seem obvious, but we're here for many reasons. First, we are gathered here to partner with HHF to bring hope to those who are hurting and to restore Portland to that beautiful, safe city that it once was. And we're going to do that by raising funds. These funds will be given to specific organizations who are already doing amazing work among the homeless population in our city. And you'll be hearing from each one of them tonight. We have 4 finalists. You'll hear from all of them. They are wonderful organizations. Those of you who give or have given $1,000 or more during this calendar year will be able to vote for your favorite organization, and we'll explain later how you'll get to vote. You'll be using QR codes. Tonight, you'll be hearing from a lot of different people. You will hear from Doug Marshall, President of Hope for the Homeless Foundation. He's going to share with us about how we can solve the homeless crisis in Portland. You'll also hear from Steve McCarty. He's another HHF board member. He will explain the Champions Fund and the Evergreen Fund. These are 2 different funds, and he'll give you all the details about them. We will also introduce you to our 4 finalists. These are the organizations we'll be partnering with. We call them finalists because they've been vetted. These are not just 4 random organizations that we picked. We looked at so many different organizations, paid attention to what they're doing, and then we got 4 finalists that get to make it to this event. So they're already winners. They're already doing fantastic work. You'll be hearing from all of them. And then we'll have an interview with Molly Ryken and Ron Amal, the Executive Director of Transitional Youth, and I have a feeling you're really going to enjoy that interview. Later in the program, anybody who's given $1,000 or more, as I explained earlier, will be able to vote. It will be a great night. It already is. As you may or may not know, this is HHF's fourth consecutive year rallying people together to make a difference in the city of Portland. And today I want to highlight the importance of small beginnings and big dreams. 4 years ago, all we had was a vision to end the homeless situation in Portland. But behind that vision was a man that was committed to seeing his city transformed. That man is Doug Marshall. And together with a group of friends, they founded Hope for the Homeless Foundation with the goal of working towards this beautiful vision for the city, a community where everyone can thrive and homelessness is rare. Please welcome Doug Marshall, President of Hope for the Homeless Foundation.
I'm all mic'd up. Well, thank you for coming tonight. We're honored to have each and every one of you here. There are many places you could be at this moment, so we don't take it for granted that you decided to join us for Hope for the Homeless Foundation's annual fundraiser, Partner Together to Give Hope campaign. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit about who I am. After 42 years in the real estate business, I retired in 2021. For 35 years, I financed commercial real estate, mostly apartments, but other property types as well. For the last 18 years that I was in business, I was the president of my own mortgage brokerage firm, Marshall Commercial Funding. So that's my background, my business background. But more relevant to this presentation is my experience with the homeless. I've been involved with the homeless for 30 years. 16 years I volunteered for an organization called Blanket Coverage. I helped feed the homeless on Monday nights. In 2011, my wife Carol and I started the Jesus Table. We provide a meal and a conversation to anyone who walks through the door on Tuesday nights at our church. For 5 years, I was on the board of Fairhaven Recovery Homes, which provides transitional housing for addicts that want to turn their lives around. And in 2019, I started Hope for the Homeless Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit with a 7-member board with no paid staff. So what do? We vet nonprofits that help the homeless to determine which organizations to financially support. And we'll talk more about this later. So why am I telling you my story? Well, there's really 2 reasons. First of all, HHF is not my first rodeo, and I want you to know that. I have 30 years of experience helping the homeless. Number 2, I'm telling you my story because some of you will not agree with what I'm about to share. And because we have different views on the homeless crisis, some of you may think of me as being heartless towards the homeless. And hopefully after hearing about my background, you'll realize that that's simply not true. We just have different perspectives on how to solve the homeless crisis. And if you would like to start a conversation with me over a cup of coffee so you can tell me your thoughts about the homeless crisis, I'd be eager to listen to what you have to say. I mean that. So at the end of tonight's presentation, you'll be given a response card to fill out. And if you'd like to meet with me, just check the appropriate box. So let's get started. So what is the big takeaway from tonight's presentation? If you leave with only one idea from tonight's presentation, I would like it to be this. Portland's homeless crisis is solvable. Now, there's going to be a quiz later. You think I'm kidding, but I'm not. A quiz is coming, and the right answer to the first quiz question is Portland's homeless crisis is solvable. Okay? Last month, Carol and I had the opportunity to vacation in Scotland. Scotland's a beautiful country. Our first stop was Glasgow. Now, Glasgow has the same size population as Portland, about 625,000 people. Now look at this photo of downtown Glasgow that I took while I was there. What do you see? Anybody? What do you see? I see a vibrant downtown with core with hundreds of people enjoying the shops and restaurants of the city. That's what I see. And it begs the question, doesn't it? Why do they have a healthy, inviting downtown and we do not? Or to put it another way, why do we have a homeless crisis and they do not? And make no mistake about it, during our 3 days in Glasgow, we saw only one panhandler and we saw no homeless tents. So what is it about Portland that makes homelessness flourish? Now, at this point in my presentation, you expect me to talk about the issues causing our homeless crisis. Makes sense, doesn't it? But you would be wrong. Talking about these issues would divert our attention away from why we're here tonight. We're not here to focus on the homeless problem. We're here to focus on the homeless solution. But if you'd like to know about the reasons why we have a homeless crisis in Portland and a whole lot more, then I would encourage you to check the box on the response card at the end of our presentation tonight. And we will send you a copy of our 9-step plan to solve the homeless crisis. Bottom line, if Glasgow can have a vibrant, inviting downtown, so can we. So the first takeaway of tonight's presentation is Portland's homeless crisis is solvable. Now let's talk about the best way for you to make your giving to the homeless count. By that I mean, how do you make your giving most effective possible? Well, when financially supporting the homeless, there are really only 3 possible recipients of your donations. They are, first of all, they are panhandlers, individuals on the street asking for money, or 2, compassionate care organizations. By that I mean they provide for the immediate needs of the homeless, for example, food, clothing, medical treatment, temporary shelter, the list goes on. Or 3, holistic recovery organizations. These organizations address the underlying causes of homelessness, and once the individual is stabilized, they help with finding permanent housing. These are really the only 3 possible recipients of your donations. When giving to the homeless, there are 4 questions to assess the effectiveness of your giving. The 4 questions are, does my giving meet the real needs of the homeless? 2, does my giving make the homeless less dependent on future assistance? Number 3, does my giving address the underlying causes of their homelessness? And 4, does my giving equip them with the tools and skills needed to turn their lives around? So let's see how each of these questions is answered based on which of the 3 possible recipients you could donate to. Let's start off with panhandlers. When giving to a panhandler, does your gift help with their real needs? Well, the most reliable sources or studies indicate that the cash given on the street to homeless people is counterproductive. It is mostly spent on drugs and alcohol, not their basic needs. Sad as that is, giving to a panhandler makes them more dependent on future assistance, does not address the underlying causes of their homelessness, or equip them with the tools and skills needed to turn their lives around. I characterize giving to panhandlers as feel-good giving. It makes the giver feel good about giving to someone in desperate need of help, but it does nothing to help the recipient gain stability over their situation. In fact, it could cause harm by feeding their addiction. So let's go on to compassionate care organizations. When giving to an organization that provides compassionate care, does it help the homeless with their real needs? And the answer is, you bet. Yes, it does, absolutely. There is a litany of immediate needs of the homeless that can be met by organizations providing compassionate care. But for the other 3 questions, the answers are all no. Compassionate care makes the homeless more dependent on future assistance, does not address the underlying causes of their homelessness, or equip them with the tools and skills needed to turn their lives around. I characterize giving to compassionate care organizations as ineffective giving. It helps the homeless with their immediate needs, but does nothing to help them get out of their existing predicament. But compassionate care, whether from nonprofits or government agencies, is ineffective. It doesn't solve the problem, it enables the problem to fester. Instead of making the hard choices to get out of their situation, compassionate care oftentimes makes it easier for the homeless to stay put in their misery. Understand this, I am not bashing compassionate care. We need to be compassionate towards the homeless. If I were against compassionate care, I wouldn't be leading the Jesus table. For those of you who are Jesus followers, we are commanded to help the poor, the widow, the downtrodden. But if the goal of your giving is to help the homeless become stabilized and housed, then giving to organizations providing compassionate care is ineffective toward achieving that goal. So let's take a look at holistic recovery organizations. Holistic recovery organizations can answer yes to all four questions. These organizations start by meeting the immediate needs of the homeless, but compared to compassionate care organizations, holistic recovery organizations make the homeless less dependent on future assistance by giving them a hand up, not just a hand out. And once the homeless see the benefit of having their immediate needs met, many times they want to address the underlying causes of their homelessness. These organizations then equip them with the tools and skills needed to successfully help them become housed. For this reason, I characterize donations to holistic recovery organizations as effective giving. So the second takeaway from tonight's meeting is this: give to holistic recovery organizations. If the goal of your giving is to help the homeless become stabilized and housed, then give to organizations that provide holistic recovery. I recently read a book titled Shrewd Samaritan by Bruce Wittick. Mr. Wittick's treatise is considered by many as the seminal book on how to give effectively to alleviate world poverty. In his book, the author summarizes beautifully what we do at HHF. In fact, it's like he wrote it for us. He says this: "My word to donors is to withhold donations to any nonprofit unable to offer credible third-party evidence that it is helping the people it claims to help." Let me read that one more time. It's that important. My word to donors is to withhold donations to any nonprofit unable to offer credible third-party evidence that it is helping the people it claims to help. In a nutshell, this is what we do at Hope for the Homeless Foundation. We are that third-party organization that I mentioned in that paragraph. We objectively measure whether a nonprofit is benefiting its alleged beneficiaries, and for those that meet our criteria, we financially support them. So now you know what we do. The bigger question is how do we do it? Are you aware there are 325 nonprofits in the Portland area that help the homeless? Yeah, you heard me right. 325 nonprofits. That's a lot of nonprofits. So how do you determine which ones are making a lasting difference in the lives of the homeless? Well, how they answer three fundamental questions narrows down which organizations deserve to be financially supported. Those three questions are: do they provide transitional housing, getting the homeless off the streets and into a structured environment? 2, do they address the underlying causes of homelessness? You see, if an organization doesn't address one of the underlying causes of homelessness, then they're not solving the problem. And 3, once stabilized, do they assist with finding permanent housing? Of the 325 organizations that help the homeless in the Portland metro area, we estimate, we don't know, but we're estimating right now, approximately 30 of them can say yes to these three organizations. That's less than 10%. So organizations that meet these three criteria are thoroughly vetted by HHF by reviewing their financial records, their current budget, and doing an on-site visit of their facilities. We then create an objective vetting summary that asks 5 critically important questions. 1, do they know the number of people they tried to stabilize and house last year? Okay, and they know the number. You'd be surprised. There are organizations that don't know that number. Do they know their success rate? In other words, of those that they attempted to help, how many did they succeed in helping achieve stabilization and housing? And do they know their success rate 1 year later? It's one thing to go through a program and having a successful outcome. It's another thing to see how well they do 1 year later and 2 and 5 years later. So we ask, is their success rate after 1 year? And is their effort cost effective? Do they know what it costs? And is it cost effective? And do they focus on the chronically or the recently homeless? Our preference is on the chronically homeless. Chronically homeless is someone who's been on the street for a year or longer. So each organization is vetted based on these answers to these 5 questions. So I'm going to give you an example of one that we did in 2020. Oop, did I do something wrong? I did. Let's go this way. So here's an example of a vetting summary for Do Good Multnomah. If you take a look at that organization, in the year that we vetted them, they had an annual budget of $2.9 million, and they target chronically homeless veterans. That's what they do. They're an awesome organization that helps with veterans on the street. They attempted to help 208 people, and they were successful in helping 98, which means they had a success rate that year of about 47%. And then their success rate 1 year later was 92%. In other words, of the 47%, 92% were still housed 1 year later. And their cost per person help was just under $30,000 per person. Okay? So let's see where I'm at on my notes here. Okay, we have a summary of the 16 organizations that HHF has vetted in the 4 years we've been in operation. Now, I don't want you to panic here or get a glaze over your eyes, but I'm going to just quickly show you this slide. Now, for those of you who are not numbers oriented, I understand. Just hold your breath. We're going to make it through this. Okay? Now, I don't expect you to understand or even look at all these numbers. These are the 16 organizations. They're in alphabetical order, from Agape Village down to West Women's and Children's Shelter. But what I want to show you is there's two red boxes at the bottom of that page, okay? So I'm going to show you those, and you can just be relaxed now that you don't have all those numbers looking at you. And there are 2 numbers that I want to show you on that page. And the first one is the number of people helped in the year they were vetted. That's 2,190. That's just rounded up to 2,200. So in the year that those 16 organizations were vetted by HHF, they successfully helped 2,200 people get off the street. And that's not a small number, folks. That's a sizable number. And they did it at an average cost per person helped of just under $8,000. You know, that's amazing as far as I'm concerned. So, what do you think is a better use of your money? Stabilize and house, average cost of $8,000 to get one person off the street. Or you can look at it from the standpoint of incarceration. The average cost annually of getting one person incarcerated is $51,000. And that's an annual cost. The $8,000 is a one-time amount. Or building affordable housing units, which doesn't solve the problem anyway. It just builds houses for them, but doesn't hit the underlying causes of their homelessness at $490,000. And that number didn't come out of thin air. That is the number that Mayor Wheeler proposed last November in his plan to help the homeless. $490,000, which is absurd. So, we believe at HHF that we should financially support nonprofits with a proven record in helping the homeless become stabilized and housed at the very low cost of $8,000 per person. In the 4 years Hope for the Homeless Foundation has been in existence, we have vetted over 30 nonprofits that help the homeless in the Portland area. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, we've identified 16 holistic recovery organizations that meet our vetting criteria. And tonight, we are excited to introduce you to 4 of these awesome organizations that are worthy of our financial support.
Thank you for sharing such thorough information. I feel like you educated us. The amount of work and research that you've done, it really helps us understand not just the crisis, but how to effectively help. Those questions that you asked. I don't know if you took notes or not, but at some point at the end, Jeff, if we can put that slide on the screens of the questions. Does your support or your offering or your giving, does it help this or that? I would encourage you to take a screenshot of that. When I go to play, we all live here. Most of us live here. I'm assuming everybody is from Portland or the metro area. At some point in our gatherings with our friends, the homeless crisis comes up, doesn't it? And everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a solution. We can share those questions with people around us and say, hey, or whatever information you thought it was interesting, important, worth sharing, I would encourage you to share that with people. Because it's going to take everybody, not just giving. It's going to take not just all the organization doing their work. It's going to take every person that lives here committing to making a change, being educated, understanding what the real crisis is. Otherwise, we're just going to be giving to the wrong places. That's just a big side note. That was not even on my notes. But we are grateful for your work, Doug. You see, people like me, and some of you here who are just not good with numbers, that is not me. We are grateful for people like you, because you do the work for us. So thank you. Thank you for painstakingly looking at all the numbers and all the causes and all the things that we need to know and understand. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to Steve McCarty. He is one of the HHF board members, founding members, and he's going to share with you about a new development on how we plan to distribute our financial grants moving forward. We are ready for you, Steve.
Well, again, I want to say thank you for being here. I've got to meet a lot of you at the tables, and we are grateful that you are here tonight. So thank you very much. During the first 3 years of HHF's existence, our financial grant policy was pretty straightforward. We distributed all of the funds that we raised, less any expenses, and we distributed those to the 4 organizations for that particular year. It was pretty straight. But last year, as we got into this further, the board began to discuss a new approach to distributing these funds to the recipients, and we did this for 2 reasons. First, we asked the question, what happens if when the donations that we raise are more than is prudent to give to an organization? It can be more than what the organization should have. Can we be too generous? And we believe the answer is yes. So, for instance, the grants to be given out could be larger than the annual budget of some of these organizations. Some of them are pretty small. And the board thinks this is not the wisest use of your contributions. So for now, we have limited the amount of contributions to $200,000, the initial contributions, with 40% going to the largest vote recipient and 20% going to each of the other 3 recipients. So that's the first reason. Can we be too generous in a budget for some small organizations? And second, potentially most important, the board believes that a sizable grant once to an organization is less influential on their helping the homeless than giving a modest amount annually. In other words, we could give them one grant that might help them to do something, but how do we follow up? One grant may not help them other than that one particular year. So we want to make sure that if the organizations know that they can count on HHF to give them a grant every year, that they can plan accordingly. They will know that there's going to be something coming their way and where they might be able to hire additional staff or to be able to start a new outreach or counseling program that will increase the number of people that they serve. So for these two reasons, we have decided to divide our financial grants into two distinct funds, the Champions Fund and the Evergreen Fund. This year, the Champions Fund will distribute up to $200,000 to our 4 grant recipients, as I talked before, in the 40% and the 320s. Any funds above and beyond the $200,000 will be distributed through the Evergreen Fund at the sole discretion of the board. And the intent of the Evergreen Fund is to support prior grant recipients each year, assuming that their metrics continue to be strong. So we will go out and ask for their numbers to see, are they still doing what they said they were going to do? So in summary, we must grow our donations each year so we can continue to support these organizations through the Evergreen Fund. Now, remember, supporting HHF means two distinct things. First, we are doing the work of identifying and vetting these organizations so you don't have to, right? So you don't have to. And secondly, with the board covering all of the administrative and event costs, 100% of your donations go to these great organizations that are doing this very effective work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. How's everyone doing? You're doing okay? You're holding up? I know we've shared a lot of information, but we believe it's important to explain to you what we do, how we do it, and why it's important to support organizations that have been vetted, organizations that truly offer long-lasting solutions. It's important work. Thank you again, Steve. Now it is time to hear from our first finalist. This organization is called Agape Village. They offer shelter and case management to help the homeless break the cycle of poverty and stabilize their lives. Let's watch their video.
So we started Agape Village out of Central Church of the Nazarene. We have the church building that we serve out of, and then the village is probably about 15 to 20 units. So we do lots of relief effort. We do food, we do, again, the shelter, and we do case management for people that are on the street. They then find out about the village and get connected with us through that. There are unhoused neighbors. There are those that are in our community that are ready to start to build the necessary resources and acquire the tools that they need to move out of poverty, to move out of homelessness, and to begin to live a healthy and stable life. So when they come either to the village or even just come to us, to the church, they are offered case management support regardless of their situation. We have a on-staff case manager who will meet with them as often as they would like to work on stabilizing their life. So the grant from Hope for the Homeless, we are going to use that to help provide staffing. So one of the things we see in a lot of what we do is it requires quite a bit of time to build those relationships, and it takes time to mentor people and coach people in life. And so with additional staff, we will be able to double our capacity in the village and be able to mentor and help even more people, not just transition into housing, but sustain that housing and break that cycle of poverty. There's one gentleman that was with us for about 2 years. He came to us having suffered a traumatic brain injury. He had some pretty serious physical issues and things that he was facing. In working with our case manager, we were able to help him with his settlement because of the accident that he was involved in prior to coming to Agape Village. And that settlement allowed him to actually purchase his own home. And so now him and his friend, they live together in this mobile home, and he's continued a relationship with us. This is just another example too of the ongoing support that a lot of the folks that we work with continue to need, because he too didn't know much about paying bills or how to own your own home, and okay, so if this breaks, how do we fix it? So we've been able to continue to help him with that, even to where we got volunteers together that were able to put a new roof on his building and to re-side his trailer. But he's still there and he's still doing great. Just over the last 3 or plus years, seeing him go from unhoused to owning his own home and living a fairly stable life. So it's been good to see. I think what I love the most about what we do is just seeing people discover their worth and their value, that they are capable of doing things they never thought they were. They are capable of getting a job. They are capable of finding permanent housing. They are capable of living on their own and being self-sufficient. And I see a lot of that is them discovering their own self-worth and values. We're putting love into action by helping people break the cycle of poverty and homelessness in their lives.
Thank you so much to Agape Village. I actually drive by this village all the time, and I always wondered what kind of village or shelter it was, and now I know. And now next time I drive by, I'll say that's the place where they put love into action, where they break the cycle of poverty, where they help people see their worth and their value. And I'll smile. I know I'll smile next time I drive by it. So thank you so much, Agape Village. Let's give them a hand. It is time for our second finalist. I'd like to introduce you to City Team Portland. They are an emergency shelter for men, and they also have a long-term residential program for substance abuse. Let's hear from them.
City Team is an organization based in San Jose, and we have 5 cities, and I have the privilege of running the Portland branch. We are an emergency shelter currently for men, and we are also a residential drug and alcohol treatment program. Our most recent program is called Night Strike, which is an outreach program that we do under the Burnside Bridge. City Team has a Renew program, which is near and dear to my heart. That's our substance abuse long-term treatment program that I went through in 2018. We have our shelter, which is an emergency shelter open to any man experiencing homelessness. I entered at 43 years old, October 1st of 2018. I was living on the streets for a short period of time. I was terrified, I was alone, I was addicted to heroin. I found City Team through our voucher program and went through the shelter process for 3 days. And then a young man came out to me while I was waiting in line, and he said, "You don't look like our typical homeless guest. Do you maybe need some help beyond shelter? We have this extraordinary program called City Team Renew. You can live with us for a year. You help us operate the shelter. We'll teach you about your disease. We'll introduce you to a higher power." And I said yes. It's a common story, and we're seeing that more and more in Portland, specifically at City Team. The men that are coming into our programs all have substance abuse disorder in some form or another. And providing that shelter as a launching place, a safe place for them to come in, get a shower, to get a meal, and then we can offer our Renew program to them. And that allows us to first build some trust by meeting their immediate needs. And once that trust is established, their immediate needs have been met, we can provide pathways back to society just like they did for me. So our main facility has 64 beds, as well as a mat system for our shelter. Our shelter currently holds about 34 mats. The 64 beds are a combination of our Renew long-term drug and alcohol program, as well as the Youth Collective. We are currently 100% privately funded. We have an extraordinary group of donors that has increased recently. We're in a growth period. City Team Portland has only been serving men to date, and we're really excited to be launching this end of this year our first ever women, kids, and family program. With the grant that we would receive from the Hope for the Homeless Foundation, we would be able to staff that program. It would also help us acquire the land and the building that that program will run in, and so we're really excited about that opportunity. The work that we do at City Team is difficult and it's challenging, and right now in Portland we're seeing a crisis like never before. But I will tell you what keeps me going is that among all of the darkness that's out there, the addiction, the homelessness, the food insecurity, I get to see miracles every day. I see men just like myself go through our program, graduate, reunite with their families, their kids, get jobs, and become producing members of society. And that's really what keeps me going.
Thank you so much to City Portland and to Lance. What a way to come full circle for him, from going through the program himself and now being the executive director, helping other people. He's a living testament that City Team Portland, they know how to offer the homeless population a pathway back to society. Those are the words that he used, a pathway back to society, and he's done it. He's done it himself. Let's give him a hand. Time for our third finalist. Are you ready? This organization is called Open House Ministries, and they are a family shelter. They serve couples, families, and single women by taking them in and engaging each one of them with life-changing interventions. Let's watch their video.
Our mission is we are a faith-based organization. We restore families who are homeless, not only by providing shelter, but also by engaging with each family with life-changing intervention through our Christ-centered program. We have studio apartments. We serve 36 families, 127 individuals, half being children under the age of 18. We serve couples, families, and single women. A typical stay for one of our residents is 6 to 9 months, but they can stay up to a year, a week at a time, as long as it takes, as long as they're progressing. Part of the stay at Open House Ministries is we do on-site vocational training. That's where they go into our thrift store or our bike shop, and they learn soft skills like how to get up in the morning, how to get to work on time, but they're also learning merchandising, bike mechanics, customer service. So we are funded private funds. We don't take any funding that stops us from talking about rebuilding a relationship with Jesus Christ or being able to pray with folks. So we are funded through our local community, grants, and generous givers like you. Open House Ministries is going through a lot of growth right now. We're actually building a 30-unit complex across the street it's actually an apartment complex, studio to 3-bedroom, that will also house our new vocational training through bike shop, thrift store, and coffee shop. Through that capital campaign, some of our operational giving has streamlined pretty low, so we would be using this money to continue our normal operations. So the word holistic to me means we're not coming at it from one avenue. We're really taking the person and we're looking at them as a whole. And so we're looking at different areas in which we can help a family, whether it be through nutrition, finances, spiritual, daycare, just kind of really coming at it from an approach that looks at them as a full body. So we have several success stories. One of the success stories that comes to mind is we did have a single mom. She had 3 daughters. She moved into our shelter. She was broken, years of abuse, years of drug abuse, broken relationships with her family. She moved into our shelter. She started taking the program. She started learning things. She started learning about Jesus. She started learning about restoration, forgiveness. Most of all, she learned about having hope again. She had people who believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. And here's how I know it works. I'm her. And I am now the executive director at the same shelter that actually saved my life. Lasting Solutions is giving people the correct resources to build on as they leave shelter so that they never become homeless again.
Wow. That last sentence that she shared. Lasting Solutions is giving people the correct resources so they never become homeless again. She couldn't have said it better. The goal of their organization is the goal of this gathering, to support organizations who are offering those long-lasting solutions. Let's give them another round of applause to Open House. House Ministries. These are very inspiring stories, aren't they? They're truly, truly inspiring. At last, we are ready to hear from our fourth finalist. They are called West Women's and Children Shelter. They offer shelter to vulnerable women who have experienced domestic violence. Let's hear from them.
The Salvation Army's West Women's and Children's Shelter strives to be a safe place for survivors to begin again. We are a domestic violence shelter. We serve vulnerable women. Our survivors are some of the most vulnerable within the community, within Portland. They are often quite isolated and lack resources. They are often within a situation where they're not only trying to care for themselves, but also their children. It's not uncommon for us to get women with 4 or 5 children, sometimes 6 children. We have a 60-bed facility that has 24 rooms. We can meet the needs of survivors from singles to families with up to 6 children. The facility is an undisclosed location within the city so that they're safe. We're an emergency shelter that meets the needs of those that are actively fleeing those domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, trafficking situations. It's not just that they might be homeless, but it's that they are homeless because of domestic violence. We operate through donor support and some government grants. This funding would help us to support us in expanding our services to do more, to meet the needs of more survivors on a day-to-day basis, to support programming for their children as well. We had a woman who came to us through the national hotline. We brought her in, her and her children. She spent about 10 years homeless between multiple different states, and she found herself in a vulnerable situation and ended up fleeing that situation. And so when she joined us and she had her advocate begin to support her and meet all of these needs, she was able to sort of peel away the layers of the onion, so to speak, in her life, and we were able to eventually get her into housing, her children get into school, and just she had everything sort of provided for her so that now she's able to provide for her own needs. So we have the shelter program, and then we have the housing program, and then we have a children's program. So we have multiple programs to meet the sort of various needs of everybody within the system of care that we have. We have been serving survivors of domestic violence for 40 years. So this program began in the early 80s, and we have been doing that since then.
Thank you so much, Justin. I love that they not only have the shelter for women and the program for women, but also a program for their children. That's amazing, because it's not just the mom, but the children as well, who need that second chance, who need that support, that care, that opportunity to thrive again. So let's give them a hand. Great organization. Doug, I see that you are ready. We are ready too.
So now you've seen the videos of these 4 financial grant recipients. Aren't they amazing? Yeah. They really are. And now that we have you all fired up to give to holistic recovery organizations, our third and final takeaway from tonight's presentation is this. And that is, give to holistic recovery organizations by donating directly to HHF. In other words, give to HHF instead of giving directly to organizations on our approved list. I know, that sounds really self-serving, doesn't it? But let me explain why. There is a method to our madness and why we say what we do. There are 3 reasons why. And the first one is HHF wants to continue providing our invaluable service. We're the only organization in the Portland area that objectively measures an organization's effectiveness in helping the homeless become stable and permanently housed. In fact, we might be the only organization in the country that does what we do. Okay? So when you give directly to an organization on our approved list, you're using our invaluable service without helping us to continue what we do. So that's the first reason. Second reason is, We believe HHF can be a better steward of your donations to the homeless because of the work that we do. We are uniquely qualified to determine where your money should be spent. And 100% of your donations to HHF goes to those organizations on our approved list. All of our overhead, including the costs of this fundraiser, are paid by our board or tonight's table hosts. All of it. Meaning that 100% of your donations go to the organizations on our approved list. And the third reason why, and maybe most important, is that HHF has more influence than your individual donations. The most important reason to give directly to HHF is this. When you give to an organization, you have no influence on how many people they serve. But when you give to HHF, your donation has more influence for two reasons. One, because when we pool your donations with donations from other donors, we have a much larger amount to distribute, and that naturally gets their attention to accommodate what is important to HHF. And what's important to us is that they grow their results. Number two, once a nonprofit is on our approved list, our vision is to support those organizations annually that continue to have good metrics. And once they understand that they have a steady source of income from HHF, they can then plan accordingly. And that is why your donations have far more influence when you give directly to HHF rather than giving to one of the organizations on our approved list. You see, we don't just want to measure an organization's results. I mean, that's important, don't get me wrong. But we want to influence their results. As individual donors, we have no influence on the organizations we want to financially support. But collectively, when we pool our donations, we can positively impact the results for helping the homeless, and that is what we want to do. So at the beginning of our event tonight, I told you our homeless crisis is solvable, and it is. I told you about the importance of giving to holistic recovery organizations. I told you about how we identified the few holistic recovery organizations from the many organizations that provide compassionate care. And I told you about our objective vetting process for each organization on our approved list. And I'm confident of this: when you donate to HHF, you have a positive influence in solving our homeless crisis. So with that, I'm going to move on to the next part of our agenda tonight. I am very much looking forward to hearing from our next speaker, someone I had the privilege of meeting last year for the very first time. Her organization, Transitional Youth, was last year's top vote-getter at our fundraiser. So how does a 14-year-old who is pregnant and homeless on the streets of Portland become the executive director of Transitional Youth? You'll hear her story next. Please join me in welcoming Rana Mall and HHF board member Molly Riken.
Well, hello everyone. Good to see you all. Thanks for being here. And welcome, Rana.
Thank you.
We have really been looking forward to this. We are, well, you'll probably remember, some of you will remember Rana from last year. She told the story of Transitional Youth and just did a wonderful job. But tonight we get to actually hear her personal story, and it is a remarkable story. So I know you're going to be touched, as I always have been when I hear the story. So take us back, Rana, if you will, to the beginning of your journey.
Sure. Well, I was actually born into homelessness in New Orleans. And I am one of 7 children, and there's 6 dads involved. So that will tell you a lot about my story without saying too much. My mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia, mental illness, was hospitalized. My dad was an addict, a gambler, an alcoholic, and very abusive. The first 7 years of my life, actually, my home was a car. I don't remember ever having a home. For the first 7 years of my life, and I can literally remember the feel of the carpet of the car on my face because that was my bed, was the floorboard of the family car. My dad had a zest for the street, and we drove all over the country. At one point, he tried to kill my mother. He took a shot at her and missed, and it was at that point that she knew she needed to run. She'd already given up her first 3 kids, and then an older sister, and told me I was next. She made her way to Portland when I was 7 years old. I experienced a home for the first time. My dad left when I was 10 completely. He walked out, and I never saw him again, never knew if he was alive or dead. But interestingly, I would sometimes look at a park bench and see someone homeless and wonder, is he out there? You know, Christmas, Thanksgiving, things like that. My mom worked several jobs to try to afford us, and she couldn't. And so one by one, she gave us up, and I decided to beat her to the punch. And so at 13 years old, after hearing I was next, and watching my older sister be put in the back of a police car and taken away, and being told, she's not your sister anymore, I said, I need to go. And so I ran at 13 and ended up on the streets using drugs and surviving. And a 13-year-old on the streets, you can only imagine what they face. And that's exactly what I faced. And at 14, I was pregnant. But it's interesting because this is where my story started to turn. I was high, using drugs, on the streets, homeless, hopeless. I literally had a death wish. I was pregnant, but I didn't know or care. I didn't care if I lived or died, and I certainly didn't care about this baby. I didn't have the bandwidth to care. But I was walking down the street, and all of a sudden I went down, I fell, and I was instantly sober. And in that moment, I heard these words, this baby isn't going anywhere. And that's all I needed. I knew that God was real. I didn't know what his name was, didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about him, but I knew that in that moment, being instantly sober and hearing those words, and that's where the beginning of my journey came, in all of a sudden having hope. Okay, God, if that's you, if you're real, then I need help. And that was the beginning of just a little glimmer of hope. And over the next few months, I found a way to hide under a friend's bed, in a closet, trying to get off the streets because we were using drugs out there. There was trafficking happening out there, and I needed to hide, and I did. And it's a long story I won't continue, except for to say it was during that time that I knew I needed to come back and help these kids, that I was. There were many of us out there. And so I ended up finishing school. I graduated with a 4-year-old daughter. If you ever want to hear my story, I'm more than willing to share, but we are limited on time. And graduated high school with a 4-year-old daughter, got into college, and got every key I could find to put on my belt to open up doors for other kids out there just like me. And so this is what I've devoted my life to today.
I love your story. I don't love the pain that you've experienced, but I love how God has turned it around and used that pain to enable you to be the mentor and the advocate and the friend that you are to all the kids at Transitional Youth. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate that. You have been involved with Hope for the Homeless now for about almost 2 years.
Yes.
Okay, so can you tell us, what is it about Hope for the Homeless that really stands out to you as an organization?
Well, I'll say that amazing organizations, by the way, and I personally vouch for each one of them that you've listed. I appreciate what Hope for the Homeless is doing because it's real. We're all frustrated, I think, with this homeless crisis. And just the numbers alone tell the story. 325 organizations in the city that help the homeless, but 30 bring that transformation. That says it, right? And we know that millions upon millions of dollars are being dumped into the system, but it's only growing. It doesn't match up. And so I appreciate what Doug and Carol and the board are doing to actually vet out, to find where those dollars are going and trace them. Are they really helping? And they truly are. Yeah.
How is the vetting process?
Oh,
for you?
gracious, yeah. I will say painful, because I am not a numbers person. I'm the executive director, and thank the Lord I have people on my team that can help with that. It was painful. I don't even know how many times. I'm surprised we were even chosen. I'm sure Doug was so frustrated with us, but it was painful. But I appreciate it.
Oh, oh gosh. Well, we're just so happy to have you here, and I wonder if a lot of people probably don't know very much about transitional youth, so could you just give us an update on how many houses do you have now, and then maybe you could share one of your favorite transitional youth stories.
Okay, yes,
to finish.
Absolutely. So Transitional Youth is also a faith-based organization. We serve young people 14 years old to 24. I'm just beyond blessed because so many of their lives are like mine, and not a single one of them can sit in front of me and say there's no hope, because I know if I can have hope and change and live a life that is full and beautiful, I know they can too. I believe it more for them. And so currently we have 5 homes. We have a house in Wilsonville for young men, 18 to 24, on 50 acres. So our guys are getting their hands dirty, literally. Chickens and gardens and building fences. We have a house in Damascus for young girls called Harmony House. We're also 18 to 24, alongside a faith-based horse rescue, so our girls get to work with horses 5 days a week. We have a house in Vancouver for young mamas and babies, teen moms, that we get to love on and nurture and see them thrive in becoming parents. And then another house for young men in Colt, 18 to 25 also, and they work at a camp right across the street, which is amazing. And then the 5th home we just opened just about a year ago is for girls that are being trafficked in an undisclosed location. It's an emergency placement, it's triage. They come in straight from the hospital or the police station or the street, and it's a safe place for them to land. And then in addition to that, we also have Breaking Cycles Coffee and Bike Shop. I appreciate the term breaking cycles. We're breaking cycles at Breaking Cycles. And it is a job training program for our young people, 14 years old to 24. So they're coming in, learning job skills. You know, Portland loves bikes and we love our coffee. And so these are some tangible tools we can use to train our young people in job training.
That's great. Yeah. And do you have a real quick little story?
Yes. Yes, so we have some beautiful stories. So a young man we've served by the name of Anthony came in when he was about 18 years old. And he was actually second brother. I think there was 5 kids and 4 dads, very similar story. Also a little girl that was 10. But Anthony came in, 18 years old, had no ambition to get his GED, nothing. His goal was if he could get a van and live in the van, that was the supreme goal he had in his life. I know it sounds really exciting to some people. He got his GED, he got a job, started working with them, and one day we were sitting together and I said, okay, you've achieved these things, but if you could just wave a wand and dream of anything you wanted, what would it be? Oh, I'd love to go to college, but that's never gonna happen. And so I said, what school would you go to? I would want to go to Multnomah University. And so I said, you know what, let's just pick up the phone and call. And we did, right then and there. Let's get them in just through the door. A tour. Let's just get these kids through the doors. That's what they need. They need the opportunities. He was on campus that day, signed up the next. Anthony just graduated with his 4-year degree and became the pastor, the youth pastor of a church that we serve at in downtown Portland.
Would you help me thank Rana for being here tonight?
Those are powerful stories, and this is when we wish we had 3 hours just to listen to all the details, Rana. The depth. We cruised through your story, but we can tell there's just so much depth of pain, of challenges, of hope, of determination, of all those things. If anyone wants to take her out to grab coffee, is it okay for me to say that? Yes, please do that, and I will do that too. Thank you for sharing your story and Anthony's story, and just helping us witness through your life what is possible when there is hope and when there are resources and support. Because the truth is, whether we're talking about a homeless person or any one of us here in this room, no one, absolutely no one can reach their maximum potential without the help and support of others. None of us can do it alone. That's just the way it is. We can only thrive in community by coming alongside one another. There are times when it can be easy to distance ourselves from a homeless person. It can be easy to judge them or their situation, to say, well, maybe they made the wrong choices. And perhaps they did, but we do not know their stories. We have no idea what brought them to this place. And I wonder how many people share the same story as Rana. Not the exact same one, of course, but a similar story, where they were born into homelessness and didn't really have a choice. Have you ever considered that? Granted, that might not be the story of every homeless person in our city, but one thing we can be sure of is this: no one chooses a life of homelessness over a life of safety and stability. No one makes that choice willingly, not in the right mind. When I first heard Rana's story, I could not speak, I could not talk. We were over the phone, you could not see me, and you could not hear me either because I was saying nothing. I was crying, I was in my bed. And the thing that struck me the most was the fact that she got to experience this as a baby. She was born into this. And that moved me more than anything else because of the season of life I'm in. I just had a baby 8 weeks ago. Tiny little baby. And my mother's heart cannot bear the idea of my baby or anyone's baby being born into that situation. So this is him. His name is Elliot. Just turned 2 months old this week.
Well done.
And his thanks, Jerry. He's sitting right there, somewhere there. When I look at him, when I look at Elliot, I feel so many things. I've got all those hormones, postpartum hormones, but I feel such tenderness in my heart because he's so vulnerable. I know that he cannot make it without my help. He just can't. And that moves me deeply. And I know that there is nothing I wouldn't do for him. I'd do anything so that he can do well in life and thrive. And every person in the room, every parent in the room would agree with that. Now, I am not going to patronize a homeless person. I'm not going to patronize the homeless population and say that they are completely helpless without us. That is not true. That would be belittling. Many manage to get by somewhat on their own or with the help of other homeless people around them. But is that what they want? To just get by, to survive one more day. Rana, you used the word survive. You were just surviving. I doubt it. The journey from the tent campsite that we saw outside to stable permanent housing, as we see it on your table, is one that requires a lot of help, a lot of support, a lot of resources, a lot of determination, a lot of hope, a lot of people coming together, and that's where you and I come in. Any single one of us on our own can do very little to change the homeless situation in Portland. But together, we can do a whole lot, and you've heard this throughout the night. We can do a lot tonight by raising funds so these organizations can do the hard work of transforming lives. But we can also do a lot moving forward in our day-to-day lives. And I'll give you one simple example. We can begin to change the way we think about the crisis. We can begin to change the way we think about the homeless. In fact, I want to invite you to do something. From now on, anytime you see a homeless person on the streets, just remember this. They were once someone's baby. They were a baby once. And notice if that changes the posture of your heart or the things that come to your mind. I'm sure something will change. And while we may not know their story from the time they were babies until now, we can be part of their story moving forward. We can impact the way their story goes. The more we support these organizations through HHF, the more people are impacted and radically transformed. Just imagine how many people like Rana, like Renee in the video, like Lance, like Anthony, are just waiting for their chance to turn their lives around with the help of these organizations so they too can pay it forward in the future, like all these people are doing it today. We believe in the work of these organizations. We believe in the work of these 4 finalists. But more importantly, we believe there are strengths and dignity and capabilities in every person living on the streets of Portland. So let's come alongside them. Let's work together so that we can build a community where everyone can thrive and homelessness is rare. We have one more section. Our last section is pretty exciting. This is when we get to vote for your favorite organization. But before we do that, we have a bit of housekeeping to do. Just a few reminders. Reminder number 1, remember that the vote is reserved for those who have given $1,000 or more, either tonight or during the past calendar year. Also, a husband and wife are considered one giving unit and can only vote once. As Steve mentioned before, the first $200,000 in donations received this year will be distributed to our 4 financial grant recipients. The first place vote getter will receive 40% of the donations raised, which means if we raise $200,000 tonight, they will receive $80,000. That's the first place vote getter. And the 3 remaining finalists will receive 20% each, which means if we raise $200,000, they will each receive $40,000. And any donations received this year above $200,000 will be allocated to previous grant recipients at the sole discretion of the board. So, how do we vote? Yes, QR code. I told you we'd be using them a lot tonight. And this time, this is the only way you can vote. There's no paper, nothing. So I'm glad you've been practicing. So those of you who can vote, please take your phones out. And wait, but don't vote just yet. I know you're eager. Sorry, I know you're tracking. But wait, I'm gonna give you a recap of the 4 organizations, just so that I refresh your mind. Agape Village. They consist of 15 tiny homes located in East Multnomah County. They provide case management services to help homeless people break the cycle of poverty. With the financial grant from HHF, they will be able to double their capacity of people they are serving. That is Agape Village. City Team Portland is a residential alcohol and drug treatment center for men. And at the end of this year, they will be launching their first ever Women's and Families program. With a financial grant from HHF, they will be able to staff this new program, and it will help them acquire the land and building this program will be housed in. Number 3, Open House Ministries. They restore families that are homeless. They serve couples, families, and single women. They provide vocational training with their thrift store, bike shop, and coffee shop. The financial grant from HHF will help them continue with their normal operations, which is a lot. And West Women's and Children's Shelter is a shelter serving vulnerable women and their children fleeing domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, and sex trafficking. This funding will help them to expand their services to meet the needs of more survivors. So, everybody ready? Now you can vote. Jeff, show us the results. Woo! Let's see who gets. Ooh, oh, we have a tie. This is exciting. Doug, you're gonna come and tell us what we'll do. Because this involves numbers, you know, and
I always love this. And I thought it never would happen, but it happened. So we have two that tied. It is Open House Ministries and West Women's Shelter. Women's Shelter.
Yeah.
Women's and Children's Shelter. I can say that. So what's going to happen is that the first place vote getter would have gotten $80,000, and the second place vote getter would have gotten $40,000, right? So they're going to take that total is $120,000. The two that tied get $60,000 each. Obviously, that's assuming we get $200,000 worth of donations tonight. Thank you all for voting. I'll let Gabby finish up here.
thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for your donations, for voting. It's been a lovely night. Thank you so much for engaging with those questions, the QR codes, for being a fabulous audience. I enjoyed being your MC. Thank you once again for inviting me. Feel free to stay and mingle, keep drinking, chatting, whatever you want to do. Thank you so much and have a good night.